flats, people lifted out of trouble by men with white helmets. I take a shower, ice cold. Wash away the heat, wash away you see. My lips are breaking in the city smoke. I melt away. I hear your tiny voice via some satellite phone. One I don't own, one I don't know. Who owns it? Who owns my connection to you?
Take a moment here. Where are you at, actually? I'm in California, east of Sacramento.
I'm in Texas.
Okay. Yeah, I've watched some of your videos, and it looked like you were out by Stanford or maybe on the California coast at some point. It looks sort of beachy with some palm trees, but that could also have been the Gulf Coast, I suppose.
Like recent videos?
I don't know, maybe a year ago or so.
Oh, a year ago I was in Asia.
Okay, yeah, it could definitely be out there somewhere. Was it like Southeast Asia, somewhere around there?
Yeah, I was in Thailand for those videos, I think. Thailand and Malaysia.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've watched some of your videos, and I was thinking maybe in this call we discussed Malay, and you were down in Argentina.
Yeah.
Well, you were traveling. I don't get. I've traveled a lot, but all within the U.S. I'm kind of I have sort of a pro-cosmopolitan thing going on. Don't go overseas much, but I've been a lot out throughout the U.S. Yeah, so I was thinking we discuss that, or on top of, so more and or rather than or, just somewhat broader political philosophical positions. I get the sense that you're sort of informed by, I don't know, maybe Ev Psych, Nietzschean, New Right stuff.
Yeah, a lot of that. I mean, my background academically is in political philosophy. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my education really. And then I work in tech as a software engineer. But
Yeah, I am in tech as well, but I'm on like the softer side of tech, the side more women and non-Asian minorities, and I've done sort of like copywriting and sort of UX-ish stuff, not heavy on the software engineering. And part of the reason I wanted to have you on here is because I think you come from a kind of a harder tech as well as somewhat harder new right kind of perspective, and whereas Heghoulian is coming from a more British humanist social democratic tradition, very literary, and not like Three Body Problem kind of literary. It's a bit more hipstery than that, not really a kind of reading list you see among Silicon Valley types as much. But anyway, I feel like I kind of exist in between your two positions. So where in Texas are you? Austin?
yeah, I'm in Austin.
Everyone who's kind of reminds me of Bay Area people are almost all clustered there. Or maybe
Yeah.
a little bit. It's not that far.
Well, it was either going to be Austin or San Francisco. Those are the only real contenders. I was also considering Miami, but Miami's a little not really my style.
Yeah, so as I laid out earlier, kind of navigating different political traditions and trying to sort of see where we differ and all of that. I find myself sort of torn between, a kind of very muscular, market-oriented tradition and something more social democratic or kind of an egalitarian, very much non-Nietzschean but still right-wing, older classical liberal tradition. So I'm 45, and that definitely goes into my not being as on board with kind of the DR space or New Right. I come from, I was actually interning at a think tank years ago, and I am in a kind of economistic classical liberalism. And I think that my sort of fealty to pro-growth economics takes the bite out of some of the demographic Malthusianism or demographic doomerism, and just kind of more conflict-oriented way that a lot of the new right thinks. How would you kind of describe your position? Want to get into all that?
I mean, fundamentally, like philosophically, I believe in virtue ethics. So I'm sort of grounded in ancient philosophy more than anything else. And I do identify as a Nietzschean, so that's more modern. It's almost postmodern, really. But so that comes with it like an implicit set of meta values, I would say. It just it's informed my political evolution over the last, I'd say, I guess 8 years specifically now, about 8 years, 8 or 9 years. I've moved a lot around, and I found that I have some qualms with the classical liberal tradition. Obviously, I have some issues with American conservatism. The social democrat economic stuff. I understand why that's appealing to people, especially when you're young, especially if you're a very compassionate person, or you want to think of yourself as a very compassionate person. But I do believe in, the strength of market economics. I'm not really dogmatic about it, because I think that like Homo economicus is not the highest form of human being. We're not here to just maximize GDP. And so, I believe in human flourishing. I believe in building a beautiful society. I think that aesthetics are important. That art is important. That we should try to have a society that facilitates the creation of genius in scientific accomplishments, public works, other things. And I tend to be more of a traditionalist as I get older, just because I get more and more skeptical of attempts to reinvent the wheel, from scratch. And I think most of those attempts are doomed to fail. And unfortunately, we end up throwing away a lot of good things when we try to start over from scratch. Not to say that there's never a time to do that, but there's a certain impulse that can take people over, where they try to do everything on their own, and they try to throw away everything that every society from before has ever put into place and discard it as superstitious, dogma, whatever. And I think that's misguided.
Okay, and that actually brings up a certain tension I've noticed, that this kind of fusion of very kind of old school virtue ethics, wisdom, traditional views on gender, is wedded to this kind of pro AI, pro high tech, pro capitalism thing that seems as if there's some serious fundamental clashes going on there. Because capitalism, if anything, is just the constant turning over of tradition and expectations. And so sometimes I wonder if it's almost like the perfect philosophy of the tech CEO who is personally restrained and executes high levels of temperance and conscientiousness, but is helping to create a new app that will get your caviar delivered to you even faster than Postmates might. So, do you think there's any tension there, or how do you square any circles there?
Well, I'm wondering how close those things actually are. It is true that there are a lot of people in tech, and especially people, I would say, it becomes more common the higher up you go, especially in recent years, who are interested in things like ancient philosophy or really alternative areas of politics. Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, people like that are some of the known figures, but there's also a lot of unknown figures who keep it more to themselves and are kind of in the background about what they think and what their intellectual interests are. What I will say, though, about that, the idea that there's a tension, I would acknowledge that there is a tension. I think that I think that whenever you're trying to create something, if you're trying to revitalize the culture, which is what a lot of these, let's just say like techno optimists or tech accelerationist types are trying to do, which is I think the group that you're talking about, then one way to do that is the first thing you have to do is you have to acknowledge that the culture that you're living in is basically nearly extinguished, that its energetic capacity for rejuvenating itself seems to be running out. And I think we are in a place like that. I mean, all of our institutions seem to be breaking down. A lot of the systems we have set up seem to not be functioning as well as they used to. Even classical liberalism, like I alluded to earlier, seems to have sort of run its course. And okay, so if you're in that place where the society that you set up before and the things that you believed in before and the stuff that was working before is working less and less each year, then how do you bootstrap rejuvenating your society? Well, one of the things you can do is you can look further back into the past and you can see, hey, is there anything that we left behind that still has a lot of energetic capacity inside of it that could still, that if we fused it with some new ideas and some new things, could actually create be a catalyst for a kind of reaction that would give us fuel again to like reimagine a future that's better than the one that we have right now. And so I think that's where the temptation comes from. But also I would just say in defense of the past that there is a lot of untapped resources from the past. There's a lot of wisdom in the books, specifically of the Western tradition. That's the tradition I'm familiar with. So that's really the only one I can talk about at length. And those texts and the wisdom within them have not been exhausted. And so it is worthwhile to go back and find them. And there's a reason why people are still reading them. And yeah, so if what you have currently is not satisfying you, is not giving you sustenance, and not giving you a vision of the future that you can look towards that is inspiring and that seems like it's going to get things going again, then a sensible thing to do is to look to the past. And if you can combine it with some new things that are arriving just now or might be arriving very soon in the future, you could really create some amazing reactions out of that. And that might be enough to get you over the hump, because I do think we are in a civilizational slump right now. And it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world or that Western civilization is over or that our society is just going to crumble for the next few hundred years or something like that. I don't know, maybe it will. But if there's any shot at getting out of it, you should be trying to deploy all of the resources that you have at your disposal to do that, whether that's technology or wisdom, social technology, whatever you want to call it, if you want to have a chance at getting out alive.
Okay, so you're maybe positing a kind of high-tech wisdom that uses, tools of technology and commerce to sort of resurrect good parts of the past.
Well, look, the fundamental problem with technological progress, right, has always been, and Eric Weinstein talked about this previously. Even Heidegger in his essay concerning the question concerning technology got at this point, and people have been saying it. Well, people notably were saying it around the time of the invention of the nuclear bomb, but people were saying it even before then. The problem with inventing new technology is that your power fastly begins to outstrip your wisdom, right? And so how do you rebalance that? Well, you bring back the wisdom, okay? Like, otherwise you just have a giant laser gun that's just, it's like Cyclops when his visor is off. You're just spewing it in every direction. And, with great power comes great responsibility. I'm not trying to bring up all these Marvel references, but they stick with you for a reason, and that's because they're true. And if you find that your capacity for moving energy or people or matter is tremendous, then maybe the smart thing to do is to sit down and return to some wisdom so that you don't lose yourself or lose humanity in trying to harness that power.
Okay, now that's interesting. Now that kind of gets us into sort of the meat of the difference between the market enthusiasts and the kind of social democrats who, by the way, are all arrayed against the woke, and that's why just
I didn't know that.
I feel like they are all basically arrayed against the new kind of neoliberal woke coalition of sorts, right? Or the kind of the main thrust of PMC politics. I feel like they have that in common. Yet there are these tensions here regarding the economy. So you say, with great power comes great responsibility, and you liken it to, or you use the Oppenheimer as an example. Now, on the one hand, you could say that the development of the bomb and all that needs to be offset with wisdom, but lacking that or sans that, maybe we actually just limit the power that we're supposed to offset with wisdom, limit the technology itself. And you see kind of that happening now with people more on the left side who are skeptical of AI. You might embrace AI, but say it needs to be offset with kind of traditional wisdom. But why not have both traditional wisdom and less AI, or less AI? Because we are wise enough to know that people are not going to be that wise. So this is where political economy becomes complicated, the way it interfaces with political philosophy.
Well, why do you want to reduce your power?
Because we're wise enough to know it will be misused, or we know how much it may become something that is out of our hands. And in that sense, a kind of unintended, classical liberalism's emphasis on unintended consequences, which they often have not applied to the economy. In favor of thinking of the unintended consequences of, say, messing with marriage, or introducing bilingual education and so forth, which could be applied to the economy, comes into play.
Right. And if you reduce your power, what's to stop someone else from just choosing to take the power for themselves?
Okay, so I suppose then we're getting into certain game theory, or perhaps wisdom here can tell us something about the likelihood of someone else using power.
From a just purely geopolitical standpoint, right? If there's a new powerful technology that's been developed or being developed, and you say, we don't think we're good enough, smart enough, we don't think we have our shit together enough to deal with this. And so instead of actually learning how to use it and how to wield it correctly, we're going to try to dampen it down, and we're going to slow down development, and we're going to slow down access, and we're going to not move forward with something that we could move forward with. What's to stop your enemies, the people who do want to conquer you, who want to control you, from saying, well, okay, we're very glad that you want to handicap yourself. We will gladly take that power and use it for ourselves, and eventually use it to tell you what to do.
Okay, so this is where, that's a good point. This is where a certain amount of disregard for traditionalism in the service of harnessing new technologies and new forms of power actually should be heeded. Because if we don't defy tradition and pursue AI, for instance, our enemies will. And that's
I'm not really sure what you mean by traditionalism in this.
Well, AI certainly flies directly in the face of the entire history of humanity and what we know about how to interact with each other, right? So it's very much anti-traditional.
Why?
Why is it anti-traditional?
I mean, what about AI flies in the face of the history of humanity?
It's an artificial humanity that heretofore has been completely unknown to us at an interpersonal level, and the way that we've understood other humans to act and behave, and in our presence they are a certain way, and this is a strange new facsimile of the human experience. And so in that way it's very much anti-traditional.
I'm not so sure about that. First of all, I don't think that anybody really at this stage feels like the AI that they're interacting with is really human. There are certainly human-like qualities, but you could play a video game and the characters you interact with in a video game when you're really immersed also have human-like qualities. And you'll find yourself emotionally reacting to the changes in the video game in the exact same way. You'll find yourself personifying the characters. The same thing will happen when you read a novel. If you're actually really immersed into it, there'll be people that there will be artifices of the mind that you engage with as if they are relational human beings in your normal life, in your waking life. There will be people that you hate, people that you admire, that you love, that you feel are cunning, that you feel are greedy, that you feel are this, that, the other thing, intelligent, whatever it may be. And that just has to do with, narrative construction and the fact that the way that humans fundamentally interface with the world is relational. But I don't think that, AI in its present form, and perhaps not even in its future form. I mean, I don't know if you want to get into a digression about general artificial intelligence right now, but I don't see that there's an inherent contradiction between the development of this technology and the proliferation of it and the human experience. Again, it sort of depends on what we decide to do with it, how we want to deploy it, to what ends, and also who controls it. And I've paid not a lot, but I paid a little bit of attention to the Eliezer Yudkowsky and his debates with George Hotz, for example.
Yeah.
The Doomers versus the AI accelerationist people. And the problem is that what the Doomers want, what the people who are afraid of the AI want, is they want one centralized authority to control the AI and to tell everybody else what they can do with it and how much of it they can have and where it can be used. And I don't believe that centralizing the power in that way is actually going to give you the kind of safeguard that you imagine that you would want. I think that the only way forward and the only way to not lose your humanity in this, and also to stave off the potential for a competitor, in this case, I'm really thinking of this on a national level, a competitor nation, from developing better technology and using it to enslave you, because people do want to do that. Like, I think there's a problem where people get very naive about this stuff and they forget that there are entities in the world that would love to just harness your resources and make your life miserable if they could. That being said, what I was going to say is that I think the best way to move forward is to try to just continue the developmental track, develop stronger and stronger technologies, figure out ways to get it out to more and more people. And then, I trust that humanity is still humanity, and the more people that have access to it and the more powerful tools we have, the better. I mean, the only way to stop it's sort of like the gun debate in my mind. Like, the only way to stop a bad AI is with a good AI. And so everyone should have very powerful AI at their disposal, and everybody should be able to run it on their local machine and use it to combat, weird stuff going on with other people's AIs. I mean, it's funny to me. It's almost like if you were talking to me like 20 years ago and you were like, no, I have to go further back, like 30, 35 years ago. And you were like, actually, I'm not so sure about this personal computer thing. I feel like computers should just be on mainframes. If we give everybody a computer in their house, then, they're going to be using it to cyber attack each other and everybody's going to be exposed. So we should just keep all the computers in the universities. It's like, that's not going to work. Why don't you just get everybody a computer and then we can have safe, secure systems, and we'll develop it much faster because everybody will have their own to worry about.
Okay. Yeah. So this had started with me a few minutes ago saying that AI was kind of anti-wisdom, anti-tradition, and you said not necessarily, and then it sort of drifted into this discussion of geopolitics and power balances, which is orthogonal to this question of whether it's anti-wisdom, anti-tradition, or whatever.
Well, the problem with this claim about the I don't know what wisdom or I don't know what tradition or traditionalism you're talking about when you say that.
I mean, just it smacks you right in the face, I would think, at least to most normal people, that AI is breaking with tradition.
Well, what tradition?
The tradition of the human experience. It's just starting with chatbots, the experience of conversation. Now phones did that too, yes, but that's just kind of opening up a whole deeper discussion about pro-tech, but also pro-wisdom and tradition.
Yeah.
Hello.
I would just, I'll respond to that briefly, and then please join the conversation. I would just say that, especially in the West, there's the notion of like a Faustian tradition, right? And the notion of the Faustian tradition, right, is in like a Spenglerian sense, is that we are trying to harness, we're stealing fire from the gods. We are Prometheus. We're trying to reach ever further into the horizon, into open space, and we want to be expansive, and we want to use our skills and our capacities as human beings to gain ever more mastery over nature. And so in some ways, I view it as totally in line with that.
Okay, I see. Well, then let me ask you, is transgenderism anti-wisdom or anti-tradition, or is that just as much open to being part of the, tradition of traditionalism, if you will?
Well, I'm not really sure why that is related, but what I will say is transgenderism as it currently manifests in its like hyper-medicalized, really capitalist-enabled version.
It's nothing if not a mastery over nature, right?
Well, I don't know if it is, because it doesn't seem to be working that well for mastering nature. It's certainly an attempt, but it might be a more Frankenstein botched attempt than a genuine. I don't see it as really expanding people's power that much. What I will say is that the notion of people between genders, people moving between genders at different times, that definitely has a lot of historical precedent in many decadent societies, and it's certainly not brand new. That being said, the precise, almost the precise medicalized, hyper-medicalized version of it that we're operating under right now is definitely brand new. And to the extent that it's related to some kind of transhumanism or separation of the mind from the body, I think it's also based on like a flawed philosophical premise, right? Which is that your body is separate from your mind, and therefore can be, and therefore needs to be altered or changed in some really strange way in order for it to fit your mind. Your mind and the body are the same thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it rhymes if you look at it very superficially with that spirit. But I actually think that the real thing that's going on there is something much more sinister and a little bit sad, to be honest.
Okay, let me bring Heghoulian up to speed. I basically sketched out this sort of this tension between, or rather within what that guy Lyons, I don't know if you know him, Lyons, what he calls right-wing progressivism, where this kind of embrace of high tech, embrace of AI, wedded to this dedication to kind of Aristotelianism and ancient wisdom, and we're trying to flesh out how that might not be contradictory, even if at first glance it is, and I think it is. Do you have anything to say on that?
Right. Okay. So, well, good to be back.
Oh yeah, this is Alexander Murshak. He's in Texas, Southern California, and he's in the tech space, but in the harder tech. And sorry to cut you off, but I was basically also positing at the beginning of this conversation that my politics was sort of in between his and yours. You're
Right.
a British humanist, social democratic kind of orientation, and it's something that I've actually moved closer to as I've gotten older and away from libertarianism, but I still cannot front, as they used to say, and act like I'm any kind of socialist because I'm not. But anyway, yeah.
Right. Well, I would say, this kind of, as you said, social democratic thing is kind of like a legacy politics in a way. I don't really believe in it as a kind of a thing that could be realized in the present, by say the Labour Party, for example. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen. But anyway, about the issue of you mentioned Spengler, which is kind of an interesting topic. It made me think of his book Man and Technics,
Hmm.
and he has a kind of interesting vision there, because of course Spengler has a kind of tragic vision of the West in decline, and this might lead you to think, well, he must be against modernity generally, he must be against technology and so on, but he's not, right? And in Man and Technics, he rather presents the likes of Henry Ford and other great industrialists as kind of like the great artists or great poets of the modern age. And he kind of he sort of urges us to engage with technology, with scientific development, and so on, as a kind of, in a way, sort of like an authenticity, I suppose, with kind of sort of Sartrean idea, like a way of engaging with modernity and kind of engaging with the poetic dimension of modernity. But of course he doesn't see that. It doesn't go against his overall vision of decline yet. I mean, Spengler still kind of has a tragic view of things, and he still thinks the West is going to kind of burn out and kind of reach its end. But he kind of brings in some kind of racial dimension to it. He says that like he brings in there's a famous passage towards the end of the book about the famous or the Roman centurion, yeah, at Vesuvius, Pompeii, yeah, when Vesuvius erupted, and he didn't get the orders to be relieved of his post, so he stayed at his post, even as the lava and the molten rock and smoke and everything came spilling down the mountainside and engulfed him, right? So he kind of offers that as the ideal for us, that we don't sort of abandon our Western, as you say, the Faustian spirit, this kind of thing, even though it won't stop the decline. That's the thing. So I kind of see where he's coming from. I'm a bit in sympathy with Spengler, maybe. I do think we have a crisis, and the West is kind of is in decline and going downhill. But so I think so are the other civilizations in the world, though. In the Far East, they have very similar problems to us. Really, they have demographic crisis, fertility crisis. I think they have a crisis of things like creativity. Not the sort of wells of creativity sort of drying up, which we see also here. So, but Spengler is a very serious and kind of po-faced. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Creativity drying up. That's a pretty bold claim. I see what you mean in the sense of, in maybe Mark Fisher's sense of, the future having been lost, and we're just kind of, re-upping tropes and cliches to no end. But there are things percolating kind of at the edges that I think are pretty creative.
Well, I'm more pessimistic about that than you are, but that's always been a difference of opinion, isn't it, between us? But that's okay. Yeah. So I kind of, but I was just saying, like, Spengler is very sort of po-faced about it. I don't think there's any humor in Spengler really at all, and I prefer, I suppose, Baudrillard for his humor, but in many ways there's a lot of overlap between Baudrillard and Spengler, in terms of the overall, vision of what's happening. But yeah, in terms of, he talks about transgenderism, and I'm pretty much on the same page as Alexander. It's pretty sinister. It's sad, really, and I don't see it as, the Faustian spirit in any sense, really.